Hello and welcome to the Race Asylum YouTube channel. So this time we're looking at our track guide for the team tourers. So we're at Kyoto driving park this time. So we'll be showing you the best lines and the best places to go for overtakes. So hopefully it helps you out. Let's get into it now then. So we'll start off at the short version this week again, same as usual. So we're at Kyoto this time. So the short one is Miyabi, and this week we're doing our guide in the Toyota Supra. And I've noticed a little bit sketchy under braking on the rear end sometimes, so just beware of that if you do use this car. So coming into turn one, what I like to do is get two wheels up onto this curb and look for this marshal box or the end of the curb, depending on your car. It takes a lot of just practice this corner, to be honest, because it's all about just getting the line, so you need the practice for it. So I like the marshal box, turn in, and I like to gradually turn into the corner, then start to lift as we get to the middle of the track, and then maybe a little dab of brake depending what you need. Some cars a lift will be fine, some cars you'll have to brake a fair bit, and then you just want to bring the car round onto the apex, slowly bringing it round. And once you get up onto the curb about the middle, it's all about judgment. It's very hard. The only thing I've seen really that you can use, if you see that next lot of signs on the right is about to reappear, but very hard to see, or on the outside there's that gap in the grandstand, but again, because of where you're looking over to the right, not the easiest to see, but you can try and use them as markers to get back on the power. But a lot of it's just about practice and feel through this corner as to when you can get back on the power. Then you want to let the car drift out to the left hand side of the track, so it'll drift right out to the left, and then bring it all the way back across to the right. And now I'd advise a slight little lift into here, either lift just before this one and then get back on the power, cut all this track, turn back and cut all this curb on the right, and you can do your slight lift after the left, or you can do your slight lift before the left. You can do it flat if you get the line perfect, but it takes a lot of practice at the line, and you only have to be slightly off the line. If you try and take it flat, you will run wide, and when you touch that grass, you'll either hit the barrier or you'll spin the car, or you'll pick up a penalty even if you keep it together. So in the race, it might be worth just always taking that slight lift unless you're really going for it on one lap or something. So just bear that in mind. So then coming up to this corner now, then we're looking for the start of the curb. And again, depending on how quick you've managed to get through the S's will depend on how much before this curb you need to brake. So you want to be braking sort of as the curb starts, but as I said, one, that will be car dependent, and two, it'll be dependent on how quick. If you've absolutely nailed the S's, you might want to be braking a little bit earlier. And then we want to keep it straight, turning fairly early, and you want to just bring it in, and you'll see the car just start to come round. And once you see the car like that, where it started to come round, and you can see the exit curb coming, you can get back on the power full, but you don't want to get back on the power too early. You want to run out wide, but only to about here, in my opinion, from what I've done the practice. If you run any wider than this, you're just risking getting two tyres on the grass and the car will pull out to the left, or you're just struggling to get it back across to the right to get a good run through the final chicane. So just be aware of that and don't get on the power too early. And then through the chicane, we want to just basically totally and utterly cut both corners. So we want to bring it over to the right, and then we want to be coming here, and we want to be totally cutting this corner. Just keep your two right-hand tyres on the curb, and then that'll just keep you taking this straight, where again, just keep your left-hand two tyres on the curb, and then powered out back to turn one. So we'll go through this a little bit faster now then. So obviously turn one, we're going a bit slower this time, but it'll be this marshal box. We'll turn in, and then we'll be bringing it into the curb, and then back on the power as soon as we know the car's going to come all the way around. And then we're bringing the car back to the right for these S's. Tiny little bit of a lift to play it safe. Try not to cut that much, or you'll have to take a massive lift to not slide. And then start to the curb, onto the brakes, bring it round. Watch the car come round, and as it's round, back on the power, and then bring the car back over to the right, and then totally cut these two curbs. Ooh, See, but careful, if you don't cut the first one enough, you'll get a big bounce off that second one. So marshal box turn in, off the power, slightly onto the brakes if we need it. Get the car into that apex, back on the power, let the car come round, bring the car back over to the right hand side of the track, and then we want to turn in, take all of this curb, we'll have our slight safety lift, take all of that curb, and then looking for the start of the curb onto the brakes just before it, get the car rotated, and then back on the power when we see that exit coming, back to the right hand side. Didn't cut that one enough, said you really need to cut that first one so you don't run wide on the second one. So we'll try and do it better on this final lap now then. So turn in at the marshal box, slightly onto the brakes or the lift depending what your car needs. Once you're into that apex and can see it's coming round, back on the power, let the car drift out, bring it back over to the right hand side of the track, cut both of these curbs, slight lift to play it safe so we don't run wide, and then onto the brakes at the start of that curb, get it turned in. As the car's coming round, get back on the power, bring the car back over to the right hand side, totally cut that first curb, totally cut that second curb, and power to the line. So that's a lap of Miyabi. So we'll just go through some overtaking possibilities now then. So if you've got to run out the chicane on someone, you might get the inside into turn one. Very awkward corner to obviously overtake at. You do need the inside, and again, if someone does get on your inside here, or if you're trying to overtake and they defend the inside, my advice will be take the normal racing line, lift off a little bit earlier, let them come through, try and get a better line through the corner. If they're on a narrow line, they might drift wide, and if you are on the narrow line, make sure you hug it to this apex, force them all the way around the outside. They'll really struggle because the car, when you're on the outside here, because of the camber, you'll just wash out towards the outside of the track. So just be aware of that. So you're not really going to hold it, so you want to tuck back in behind them, get on the power a little bit earlier and put them under pressure coming through this S section. They might take it too much curb, make a mistake, crash off. So not really an overtaking opportunity into turn one, but it can be done if you get a good enough run. But to be honest, a lot of this track's not really overtaking opportunities. You just want to mostly put pressure on. So the same again, coming through these S's now. Don't go side by side, you're going to lose a lot of time. Unless it's last couple of laps and you're really battling for position, then I would advise not going side by side through here. But if you do go side by side, just be aware you're going to have to slow down a hell of a lot more, because you're going to have to give each other space on both. So whoever's on the inside, whoever's on the outside is going to have to give them space, and the same then on the exit. If you're on the inside, you're going to have to make sure you stay narrow so that you don't run them wide on the exit. So your best way is get really close behind them through that S's, try and get the run on them, and try and get to the inside for this corner coming up now, because again, you won't hold it round the outside of this corner. So if you get the inside of this corner, and if you're defending, same thing, defend the inside, nobody's going to go around the outside of you here. So, but just remember, if you're on that inside line, brake that little bit earlier, because it's very easy to go straight on at this corner and miss your braking, especially if you're coming out of the S's with quite a bit of speed. So if you're here, again, I'd advise just turn in a bit later, let them come through, try and get on the power earlier, maybe try and get alongside them into the chicane, but again, you're not going to want to go side by side through the chicane, so it's very awkward. Again, even if they're there and you've got alongside them here, they're going to have the inside for the first part of the chicane. So again, you know, this is where your trouble is at this track, is there's not really a definite overtaking point. A lot of it's just putting pressure on, get someone off their line, make them cut a corner, make them obviously run wide, make them get a penalty, whatever it may be, so that you can then get the position. So obviously here again, if they're on the left hand side now, just lift off, let them go, cut back in and get on the power as early as you can, and try and get the slipstream and the run down into turn one. Because really, if you go side by side through here, last couple of laps, maybe if you're really battling for that final position or whatever, maybe risk it, but just be aware, side by side, they're very easy to push each other off the track and very easy to have a crash and basically ruin your race. So here, not really any definite overtaking points. Turn of well, either end of the track, turn one or just after the S's. They're your two main places that you can attempt it, but you really need to get to the inside for both, which can be difficult to do, especially if the car in front is defending. So what you want to do mostly here is just stay tight behind the car in front, put them under pressure, and try and pressure them into that mistake. Show a nose, back out, show a nose, back out. See if you can just get them uncomfortable and make them make that mistake. So we'll move on to the long version of the track now then. So we're just at the long version of the track then, which is Yamaguwa and Miyabi together. So I'm not a huge fan of this track. It is quite a difficult track. It's a lot about carrying speed through a lot of the corners. So just be aware of that. We're using the medium tyres for this one. Obviously all the settings, tyre wear, fuel, everything is the same as it'll be for you guys. So obviously first braking marker is this Marshall hut or the 50-metre board. You don't want to be braking fully, you just want to be braking a bit and getting it turned in. The curbs here can be a bit ropey. You can get on them really early and hook the car onto them, which is a bit unnatural, but it does do it. But it is hard to do that. I like to just come in, run it deep, and just gradually be trying to turn in and hit the apex at the middle, and then you can get back on the power fully, and then the final bit of the curb should drag you around that final bit. And then obviously you want to run out to the outside of the track onto this curb, and then you want to be flat out all the way through here, just kissing each curb as you go. Try not to touch the grass at all, or you will possibly lose control of the car, but flat out through here, just kissing each of these curbs and keeping the car as straight as you can. Keep your inputs as minimal as possible on your steering. And then now coming down to this corner, bit of an awkward one in this car, because as I said before, when you're braking this car, I've noticed the back end wants to come out, especially if you're not braking perfectly in a straight line. Even if you're only 50% on the brake and a slight turning, it's very easy for the back of this car to want to slide, and if you slide you'll lose a lot of time. So I used to like to go after the 50 for this corner, if I remember rightly, and be braking before the Marshall hut, so between the 50 and the Marshall hut. But I found in this car you're better off to brake a little bit earlier, maybe the 50 or just before, but don't brake fully and keep the car straight initially, and then turn in and lift off the brakes, and hopefully then you want to bring the car in. And again, you can hook it on this curb again, but I like to just miss the apex at the start and gradually come in, and then be clipping the apex around the middle of the corner onto the curb, and then you can get fully straight back on the power, and hopefully the curb will drag you around the final part of the corner, and then you're flat out, and the car should just drift out to the right, but you should drift and just touch this curb, and then you want to be bringing the car immediately back over to the left. So as you get this kink to the right, just bring the car back over to the left hand side of the track, because we don't have this chicane in this one, we turn off right. So here you want to be braking before the 100. I think it's about halfway between the 100 and the 150, so about 120, 125, probably where you want to be braking. So there's no real standout marker, but I use the 100-meter line, and I'm judging distance from that 100-meter line, and you want to get on the brakes. Brake in a straight line as long as you can, and then turning fairly late for this one, and turn in, and as the car's coming round on this apex, you'll just see that Marshall hut come back into view. As that Marshall hut comes back into view, you can get flat out on the power. Just be careful, because of this little bump here, when you're flat on the power, sometimes the car will get unsettled, so just be aware of that you might need to obviously catch or give a slight lift. Then you want to come straight back to the right hand side of the track, and just before the end of this curb you want a little dab of brake and turn in, and get the car turned in again, and just let the car rotate round and it bring itself round to the apex. And as soon as you see that exit curb there, so we're just before the apex, but you can see that exit curb, get fully on the power, and you should be able to run without running wide, and just run out onto this exit curb. So then again, now through these S's, we're flat out pretty easily. We just want to be kissing this curb, keeping the inputs as little as possible and kissing this curb, and obviously the car will just come round, get to the right hand side of the track. And then this is similar to the other long corners we were on about, but a little bit different because it's a lot longer, this one, or it feels a lot longer. It's actually a corner that you can take multiple lines through by the looks of it without losing too much time. But I like to use that Marshall hut, and then you only want a slight bit of brake. You don't want to be braking too much, and you want to be bringing the car in, and again, just bring it slowly towards the apex. And here, once you're on the apex, you can get on the power really, really early through this corner as long as you have got the car turned in, because it opens up a lot on the exits. You can get on the power really early, and obviously the car then will come out to the outside of the track, and obviously you should still have enough room. But I find it really awkward there. I was looking to try and see if there was any markers you could use, but there's not. It's a very tricky corner where I think you've got to just practice it and try and feel the line and just get to know, right, you turn in, and obviously if you turn in at this point you'll start to come in, you'll clip the apex just after the apex, back on the back. You know, you've got to just get a feel of it. I couldn't really find any distinctive markers other than the Marshall box on the way in to help you with your braking and turning in. But other than that, throughout the corner, there's no real distinctive markers you can use. It's a lot about just feel of the corner. But you can appear to go a bit wider at that corner and still get round without losing too much time. You can get in earlier and keep it a lot narrower all the way through the corner and still not lose too much time. So it's a very awkward corner to try and explain how to do that one. So maybe you'll just have to practice it and try and get a feel for it, what suits your driving style best through there. So then coming into here, we're looking for the start of the yellow, where the yellow line starts to go away from there. Again, car dependent how early or late you have to brake. Brake in a straight line, and you don't want to apex this right hand corner, I'm finding. You want to keep that curb in view, but you sort of want to be looking to just miss. If the white line's pretend the white line's the apex and you want to just miss it. So you want to be coming round and keeping the car fairly in the middle of the track. And as you look now, you'll see the curb appear. See that second curb appear now on the right hand side? You can now get fully on the power. So if you now get fully on the power, the car's already turning, you will then clip this second apex and you'll have no worry of running wide here. Whereas if you get that first apex, it's very awkward to get on the power without running wide on the exit of that one. So that's why I like to just miss the apex and keep in the middle of the track for that first corner, and then get the apex on the second one. And then coming round here, just flat out keep the car over to the right hand side of the track. And again, car dependent, we're looking for the end of this 35, the start of this barrier on the right, whatever you prefer. I like the end of the yellow on the track, and just after it you want to be braking, but depending on your car you might want to go earlier, later, whatever. And again, you want to brake in a straight line. I like to turn in fairly late, not too late, but fairly late, to try and help rotate the car around. And again, as you see that curb coming onto view, if you've turned in late, you should have got the car rotated by this point, and you should be able to get back on the power. Just be careful, some cars you might want first gear for rotation, some you might want to stay in second, some you might want an early upshift on the exit, whether you're in first or second. If you're in first, you definitely want to upshift early, but if you're in second, some cars you might still want to upshift early. Then you want to keep the car to the left, but be very careful not to touch two wheels on the grass. I found this very easy to do, very easy to touch two wheels on the left hand side of the grass there. So just be aware of that, because if you do, it'll just pull you off and you'll crash. You won't get turned into the right. So then you can use this Marshall box on the left to help you with turning, but I like to just look across towards the apex, and the turning is just, you can just sort of see it with the apex line, because what you're looking to do is get turned into this corner, but you want to be aiming for that second apex already. So you want to be turning in and straightening up the car, because you want to be braking at this apex. When you get to this apex, you want to brake, keep the car straight as you're braking so you don't unsettle it. Keep the car straight, and then off the brakes and totally cut this curb. but be very careful. It does bounce a lot, and you want to be a gear higher than what you maybe, you know, most cars I think would want to be in third, but you're better off just take it in fourth, help settle that car down a little bit. But it might be third in some cars, just be aware of that. That'll depend on your car. And then we want to bring the car back over to the left hand side of the track, and we're looking for the 50-meter board or this Marshall hut. So you want to brake probably at the 50, so just after that Marshall hut, or at the 50, depending on what you prefer to see. And again, I like to turn in not late, but obviously not early into this corner, so that you get a bit more rotation on the car. And you'll see again, the car will just come round and you'll be turning round and you'll see that exit curb appear again. So same as a few corners on this track, when that exit curb appears is when you want to be getting on that power, and you should be able to get fully on that power and bring the car out to the left, and then you want to bring the car back over to the right hand side of the track for turn one. So we'll try and go through that a little bit faster now then. So we've just gone back into the pit, so we've got some warm tyres for these fast laps now. So we'll just show you through this track a bit faster. So turn one, we're looking for that Marshall box. So at the Marshall box, with a little bit of brake hand turning in, but you see with this car, see how the back end wanted to go, so we had to be careful of that. So that's got us a poor exit, trying to settle the car down. So like I said, those of you in this Supra, just be very careful through these fast corners, because when you have to dab the brakes, the back end is very sketchy. So obviously we're flat through that section, keeping the steering inputs minimal as possible. Look, you can just before that 50 get on the brakes in this car, just so you don't have to brake as hard. And once you're into that apex, you should be back on the power and no worries of running wide, because that curb will just drag you around. Get the car back over to the left, we're looking for about the 125 mark, onto the brakes, bring it down, get turned in, and as the car's coming in, see that Marshall box appear, back on the power. See, but be careful there, the car can unsettle before the end of that curb, just a dab of brakes, bring it back round, back fully on the power when we see that exit curb. I did that all wrong though, so hopefully I'll show you that better on the next lap. Obviously flat out through this section, but again, just keeping the steering as minimal as possible. We're looking for that Marshall box on the right, and we're braking and just turning in. I like to just stay away and then get into the apex, and now back on the power once you're into the apex. And you see, look how early we're on the power there, no worries of running wide. And then we're looking for the start of this yellow, onto the brakes at the start of this yellow, not getting to the apex, turning in but missing the apex, and then seeing that second curb, back on the power, and no worries of running wide there. And then up here we want to bring the car back over to the right hand side of the track, and we're looking for that yellow mark or the Marshall hut or the start of the barrier, turning in fairly late but not too late, letting the car rotate. Once it's rotated and you see that curb, back on the power, back over to the left hand side of the track, don't touch the grass, looking for that sort of Marshall hut or looking in, onto the brakes through there, and then straight line that as much as you can, keeping in a higher gear to keep the car settled. And then looking for the 50-meter board, onto the brakes, get the car turned in, let it rotate round, back on the power when we see that curb, and out. That wasn't the greatest of laps from me there, so I'll try and go through it a bit faster now, hopefully give you a better example. So looking for the Marshall hut on the right hand side, we're braking and turning in as we get to that, but not braking too much. Try and get it back into that apex, onto the power. Sorry, excuse me, onto the power as soon as you get it turned back into that apex. Flat out through here, just keeping it, the turning inputs as minimal as possible. And then back over to the right, and we're looking for the Marshall hut again, or the 50-meter board. As I said, in this car, braking a little bit early just because it's a bit sketchy on the braking. Once we're into that apex, back fully on the power, should be able to not run wide. Bring the car back over to the left-hand side of the track. We're looking for about the 125 mark, onto the brakes, getting the car turned in. We're looking for that Marshall hut to reappear. When it does, back on the power. Careful of the back end of the car before the end of that curb, onto the brake, getting it turned in, back on the power when we see that exit curb. And then flat out here again, just trying to keep the steering inputs as minimal as possible. And then over to the right, looking for that Marshall hut, And again, just a dab of brakes as we turn in. As I said, I like to not get into the apex straight away, and then when you're getting back into the apex, you should be able to get fully back on the power and not run wide. Bring the car back over to the left, looking for the start of the yellow mark. Braking at the start of the yellow mark there. Getting it turned in, but we don't want that apex. We want to stay to the middle of the track. When we see that second curb appear, back on the power, and we've got no worries of running wide then. Then we want to be bringing the car back over to the right-hand side of the track, and we're looking for that yellow mark on the road. So braking just after that, turning in not too late, but fairly late. Once the car's rotated round, get on the power. We turned in a little bit early there, which is why we're drifting wider on the exit. Then here we want to just turn in, and then we want to be braking as we're in a straight line, and then keep it as straight as we can over that curb, and keep it in a higher gear to keep the car settled. Then looking for the 50-meter board onto the brakes, get the car turned in again, not too late, but not too early, and then obviously back on the power as soon as we see that exit curb coming, and then the run to the line. So that was a much better second lap for you there. So hopefully that gives you a good example, but we'll just go through some overtaking maneuvers now. So let's just look at the overtaking points now then. There's a lot of long flowing corners here, so you can go side by side through a lot of them, but it is very difficult to get overtakes done through them. So again, through this first corner, it's a bit of an awkward one, because if you're on the inside, you're going to be at a weird angle to not get the flow through the corner, so you risk running deep. And if you're on the outside and someone is on your inside, again, you've got to be very careful. I would maybe look to see if they go deep and just try and cut in behind them and then get the run to get the line into the next corner. So it's not a definite it's more an overtaking spot that if you've got a good run out the final corner, you're already alongside. And then if you're on the outside, you're probably better off to just give this up and filter back in behind, just because of the long nature of the corner. But because of the long nature of the corner, there is a lot of different lines you can do. So you can come out wide here, then so take a faster entry into the corner, then brake a lot more and slow it down more in the middle of the corner, but that'll allow you to then get on the power earlier and maybe get a faster exit. So moves can be done, but they have to be very unusual moves to make them done there. So don't be scared to go side by side through there, because there is a lot of track space, so you can do it. Just always be aware if you've got cars near behind you, if you go on that outside line, you might get mugged off on the inside by another car, so just be aware of that. Generally, you're better to filter back in. Then through the S's here, if someone has got on your inside here, just let them have it. Don't fight it through here. You're going to slow yourselves down a hell of a lot. So just go single file through here is my advice for this one. And you just, again, like we said, we want to just clip each curb and keep the steering inputs as minimal as possible. But if you go side by side here, very easy to push each other off into the barriers. So I would advise against that, personally. And then again here, this is very similar to turn one. You need to get the run out the S's and get onto the inside to really go for the move. Very awkward play. But because it is a long corner, you can take different lines in a racing situation through this corner. You can come wider, slow down a bit more, then get it turned in and get on the power earlier, and then try and do the switch back on the other car rather than make the overtake done. Generally, you won't hold it all the way around the outside at any of these long corners, but because you have got so much space on the outside, you can run in faster, take more speed into the corners, and then slow it down more and then go for the cut back on the exit. So, again, maybe not the best move to go for if there's a car close behind you, because they might mug you off, but don't be scared to run on a different line through these wide corners, because it is possible here. So do be aware of that. Then here, again, unless you've got the inside, I wouldn't go for the move here. It's a very long corner, and if someone has got you the inside, just brake and filter back in behind them, because it's going to be very difficult to hold it all the way around the outside here. However, you can do it because you will then have the inside for the next corner. So if you do manage to hold it round, you will have the inside for this next corner. So again, it can be done. So in certain circumstances, don't be scared to try hanging it round the outside. But if you've got a car close behind you as well, it's probably not worth risking it because they might be able to mug you off. The same again with this corner. You can hold it on the outside here, especially if there is a car already on your inside as the exit. You can hold it 2x2, but they're probably going to get it back off you come this faster bit anyway. So it's probably better to just let them have it and filter in behind and then stick in their slipstream along here. So then here, flat out, again, if you, this is wide enough that if you are side by side, you can give each other enough space here. But generally, you're better just running one behind the other here. And then coming into this corner, again, same as the other two long corners we've been on about. You can run this corner a lot wider. It's a weird corner, as I said in the breakdown for the lap. There are a lot of different lines I noticed that you can run without losing too much time. I gave you what I thought was the best racing line, but I may actually be wrong with that. But there are a lot of different lines. You can run up high. So again, if you are looking to go too, don't be scared to run in a lot faster than the car on the inside and go up here and then maybe brake a bit later and try and tuck in and get the run on the exit on them. And try and cut back in behind them, but say you've got on the power a bit earlier than them and you can get the run as they drift out wide. But as we mentioned, you can get on the power very early on the inside line there, so it will be difficult on the outside. So again, I wouldn't necessarily try it if there's a car close behind you, but I wouldn't be scared to try it if you're just battling for position with one other car. So just keep that in mind. And again here, the only way to go for the move really is get the inside. And if someone does get the inside on you here, just let them have it. You're not going to hold it round the outside. If you're all the way out here trying to hold it, you're going to have to delay getting on the power so much here that they're already going to be well in front of you and on the power and gone. So you're better to just filter back in at the first part, get on the power early and run through here. And now a good place people do like to go for it on this track is if you do get the run here on the exit of that corner. Obviously you're coming into a very heavy braking zone, so people like to get the inside here, and if you do get the inside here, just remember to brake that bit earlier. But again, if you're on the outside and someone does get the inside, my personal view, let them have it. If you try and hang it round the outside, one, you're going to struggle, but two, if you do manage to hang it round the outside, naturally the car on the inside is going to drift out to the right, and they might not be doing it deliberately, but you're going to risk getting yourself pushed off the track. So to me, if you're on the outside there, let them come through, concentrate on getting a later apex so you can get on a power earlier, and then try and get onto their left hand side through here and try and get the run to beat them down into this next corner. But again, coming into this next corner, my advice, don't go side by side through here. And I would actually argue that really, it doesn't matter if you're on the inside or outside here. The car that is ahead, so once a car, if you're on the inside, if you're perfectly side by side, yet car on the outside, if I was you, I'd back out. But if you're on the inside and the car on the outside is slightly ahead of you, I would back out on the inside here and look to get the run on the exit, because it's hard enough going through these two corners because of the way you have to cut the curb single file, let alone without trying to do it side by side. You're going to lose a hell of a lot of time and you're going to risk crashing with each other. So the smarter move is, if a car's got a run on you, let them have it, filter back in behind them, and if you let them have it, you'll have braked a bit earlier, you will actually have the smoother line through this corner, and you will be able to get on the power a bit earlier because they will be cutting this curb, and like we said, it can unsettle the car, and because the car drifts to the outside, then you've got a delay getting on the power, get the car settled. If you've done that slightly earlier brake to tuck in back behind them, you will be able to judge your line better through that corner, which will allow you to get on the power earlier, so you might get the run down into this next corner anyway. So just bear that in mind through there. And then again here, very similar to a lot of the other corners, you want to get the inside line. If you're defending, defend the inside line. And again, on the outside, the way I would look if you're on the outside is just brake that, go that bit deeper, brake a bit more, turn in, and then get on the power and try and get on the power as early as you can to get the run into turn one, rather than trying to hang it round the outside, because the car on the inside is naturally going to drift to the outside. So if you try and hang it on the outside, you're going to risk getting pushed out wide. So that's all for the overtakes now, but we'll just have a quick look. I think it was Bad Dog mentioned about pit entries and exits, so we'll just check pit entry and pit exit. So obviously here's your pit lane line, so very easy pit entry here, to be honest. You're coming round, if you've took the corner on the racing line, you're naturally to the outside of the track anyway, so there's no reason for you to cut this pit entry, because this will already be your line anyway, and then if you're doing normal, you'll be drifting back over to the right. So you're already in the pit entry zone anyway. So it's a nice easy one now, just easy follow it through and into the pit lane. There's no reason to get any penalties through this pit lane, so we won't change, we won't fuel up, we'll just come back out. So, and again, the exit of this pit lane, very easy, but just be aware of cars on the exit of this pit lane. Very easy coming out, not to cross the line, because the line ends there. So very easy not to cross. Just be aware of cars coming around the outside that you might need to stay to the inside, because they will be a lot faster than you coming down the outside. So just be aware of that. But very easy pit lane entry here.
So
So
hopefully that
that's
helped
all for
out.
this one.
If it did, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next one.